Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
You're going to want to listen through all the way to the end of today's show because you'll learn a really cool technique to turn on a muscle in your body called the psoas that is probably tight, at least if you sit most of the time like a lot of us do. It's something that is completely non-obvious and it's a really cool hack. So listen through, learn about that, and learn about some new tech that's coming out of Sweden. Pretty interesting stuff today. You're listening to Bulletproof Radio with Dave Asprey. Today's cool fact of the day is that scientists discovered brain pipes or drain pipes in our brains, and they scanned healthy people at the NIH and found that your brain actually dumps waste products through the lymphatic system. If you don't know what the lymphatic system is, this is basically the sewage system of your body that doesn't have its own circulatory system. This is why I'll tell you in the books, and pretty much everyone will tell you, like, move around some already. Go for a walk. It's because that pumps the lymphatic system, which is really important. That's why I'll do whole body vibration just to get the gunk out of the cells so that it can drain and be excreted. But we always thought our brain couldn't do that. In fact, there's a whole system called the lymphatic system that uses cerebral spinal fluid to wash your brain. And Headstrong, I write about how to upgrade the performance of that. But it turns out that the guys at the NIH actually watched people's brains drain fluid into those vessels. We just never noticed the vessels because they were running right alongside a major artery. So throughout all of medical history, we just, didn't notice. So that's kind of cool because it completely changes how we think about the brain and the immune system and how they interrelate. And it brings huge dogmas into question. Things like, oh, there's a blood-brain barrier that does X. Like, oh, sorry, there's these big drain pipes in the middle of the barrier that we just didn't really know about. And what they're looking at now is whether people have MS or other neuroinflammatory disorders may have differences in that part of the system. My theory is that no, they don't, because they're getting external toxins that damage their mitochondria, that damage nerve myelination. That's why you should keep your mitochondria strong and don't eat toxic mold for breakfast. It's a bad idea. Speaking of things that you might want to think about for breakfast, by the way, did you guys see that segue? That was the smoothest segue in all of Bulletproof Radio. So thank you for your round of applause. I'm just kidding. But that was a segue that I didn't plan. Before we get into today's show, I wanted to tell you about the fact that we have 3 roasts of Bulletproof Coffee, and there's a 3-roast Bulletproof Coffee variety pack. We've got the Mentalist, which is my current favorite. I'm actually doing it in espresso, and it just drives me crazy. I love it. The original medium roast, which is my favorite for pour over, and French Kick, which is a dark roast that we dialed in with one of the guys who trains the judges in the Cup of Excellence, which is like the world championship of coffee tasting. And I have always said, dark coffee, come on, seriously, that ruins coffee. And he's like, no, we can do it. So something like 60 plus roasts later, we came up with a dark roast that I actually like, that doesn't taste like burnt, charcoal or something. So it's good stuff. You go to bulletproof.com and get the 3-pack, save a little bit of money, and you get to try them all. And there's some other exciting news. The Bulletproof Diet is now published in Hungarian. And because I am not one of those people who speaks Hungarian, although that would be an awesome skill to have, I cannot say the title properly in Hungarian yet. So I'm not going to try. But I will tell you, yay, it's in Hungarian. In my wildest dreams, I never would have expected that the Bulletproof Diet would have sold, I think at this point, a little bit more than 500,000 copies. And it's available now in 11 or 12 languages. And when I went to Japan recently, where it was published, I couldn't believe it. I went to a book signing and people were lifting up their shirts to show me their 6-packs. And if you've been to Japan, people don't lift up their shirts in Japan. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So anyway, Hungarian is added to the list. So if you're in Hungary listening right now, thank you. And you should pick up a copy in your native language because that's awesome. All right. Next up, let's talk about today's guest. This guy is one of the 100 people who attended the first annual Bulletproof conference about 5 years ago. So this was a pretty exclusive group of people who were really early on the biohacking scene. And he was a speaker at the Bulletproof conference in 2014. His name is Mike Hoban. He's a strength and conditioning coach who works with athletes at the professional level, collegiate level, and knows all sorts of weird stuff. And he's going to teach us some things today and talk about some new tech he's working with. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I forgot to mention you're coaching, whatever you call it. It's called Elite Speed. This is the name of your thing.
My company, yeah.
Yeah. And I've been out to see Mike at his facility in New Jersey. It's really nice. And he's got a strange assortment of biohacking technologies. But there's there's a thing that some of the top people on earth can do in sports training where they look at you and they're like, have you ever seen Neo in the Matrix? I know it's getting to be an older movie. It's still my favorite movie. But like he looks at reality and it's all ones and zeros dropping through. With Mike, he looks at you and you're like all planes and angles and like, oh, look, yeah, something's wrong. So last night we were having dinner and he goes, there's something in your shoulder. And I'm like, yeah, it's been popping a little bit lately. He goes, here, I got it. And like pushes on my palm. And he pushes on like weird things that have nothing to do with my shoulder in the way I see the world because I'm not Neo of the human body. And all of a sudden my shoulder stops popping and it's fine today. Like I could run current over it. I could laser it. Like there's a lot of stuff I know how to do, but it's one of these crazy things where there's all these networks of movement that are just not visible to us. And Mike is a pro at this stuff, which is why I had him on the show. So Mike, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for coming up to Vancouver Island to film this live. So this gave me a chance to play with some of his new toys and just to get a chance to hang out. And plus, anytime we get to interview in person, it's probably more fun to watch on YouTube. Go to bulletproof.com/YouTube. You can find the YouTube channel where you'll find the show. If you're not driving, in which case, well, maybe you should just listen. And if you're at work and your boss is going to see you watching a video, just keep listening. That's fine.
Just keep it under the desk if you're going to watch it.
Yeah, that works. Just put your cell phone down low. You'll
Exactly.
be fine. You'll be good to go. And well, wait, if your cell phone's down low, what are you irradiating?
It's not anything good, that's for sure.
That's right. Keep your cell phone away from your junk. Rule number one.
Big time rule number one.
So Mike, what got you into all this kind of weird stuff?
Being a strength coach, one of the things you come across is always injuries. And getting people from point A to point B, from injured to healthy, is always kind of a tricky process.
Right.
You have standard rehab, you have obviously doctors, chiropractors, and the issue is they all look at their own thing. And no one really talks to each other. And that's kind of where the issue comes from. Because normally when we get hurt, it's a multi-level thing. It's the muscle didn't fire properly, so the joint took the load, and now the ligament got stressed, or yada, yada, yada. And something caused a chain reaction. And because no one really looked at the muscular system, I decided that was something I had to go further into.
In that way, you actually did some training with Charles Poliquin years ago, and you've certainly when we first met, you were talking about some of that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And Charles has been a real popular guest on the show as well, and he's a friend and apparently a big fan of Unfair Advantage. he sent a note the other day. He's like, Dave, what's in there? Meth and PCP. I feel so good on this. I'm like, don't mince your words, my friend.
Yeah.
So Charles, if you're listening, thanks for that, and just thanks for your training, because I think his training was really helpful for you early on,
definitely, definitely. He was the groundwork for all the stuff I do today.
Okay, beautiful. Now, you got into this, and how'd you get to be working with pro athletes?
Basically, just built local kids up till they got to that point. If you get a kid when they're young enough and they're driven enough and they have the talent to begin with, you can build all those things necessary to get them into that realm to where they can become a pro athlete. I mean, it's just a matter of developing them properly from step one to the last step.
What's the earliest that you start working with kids?
I've started with as young as 10.
Wow.
And that's mostly just coordination, getting their body to synchronize. We have a lot of kids now who fall into the, excuse the expression, a motor moron category. Because so many of us spend all our time here, we're on computers, we're sitting, and that's not what our bodies are made for. Our bodies are made to move, which I'm sure everyone's heard ad infinitum, but it's a very true thing. That's why everyone keeps saying it. You have to move.
Especially at that age where you're getting the movement reflexes still wired in.
Yeah, and especially with all the things we do with kids nowadays. I mean, kids don't crawl anymore. And that's where like a lot of our development comes from. It's where we develop our cross crawl pattern. That's where we develop our cervical curve from looking up at people. And we take that away. We have kids in these rompers and these rollers, so they're walking before they should. We're skipping development.
Yeah, I actually have a problem with my infant motor reflexes. What happened to me is that I learned to read at 18 months, which is kind of cool because it develops your brain a lot.
It's kind of impressive, yeah.
But when I really got into looking at what's going on in my nervous system, if I'd close my eyes and just march in place, I would spin in a circle with no knowledge I was doing that.
Oh, wow.
And the developmental ophthalmologist I was working with is like, oh, yeah, you never learned to crawl, did you? And I'm like, yeah, actually, how did you know? He's like, well, lots of adults have these patterns and your feet don't do this, they don't do that. And it's literally this whole, one hand crosses the body. So you're seeing this in 10-year-olds now.
Oh, yeah. We get these kids who they'll try to run same arm, same leg. So as they lift up their left knee, they'll pump their left arm, which is not the way our nervous system works.
So it's a wiring thing. So you're fixing wiring at younger ages. But you're working with like the real serious athletic kids, usually a little bit later than that. So you get teenagers. I know you've done a lot of work with soccer teams, right?
Some soccer teams, yeah, and a lot of soccer teams. The biggest thing is that we have to do is develop the rear of the body.
Okay.
Because those kids tend to develop compensation patterns because they start soccer at such a young age. They'll rely on the quadriceps, which are large muscles, but the glutes and the hamstrings are larger. Plus, there's 2 muscles groups versus 1. So you work better. You're more efficient that way. You're going to be faster. You're going to cut better, and you're going to decelerate better, which is what the game of soccer is. It's start and stop, start and stop.
Okay. So you do all this kind of work, and then over time you develop some really specific techniques. And what I wanted to chat with you about today was that you've got, actually, hold on. What's your favorite sport like to work with? Like what kind of pro athlete is the best athlete to work with?
I work with a lot of baseball players right now. I have a kid who's trying out for the NFL. He's a lot of fun to work with. I've trained him since he was 14. He's 22 now.
Okay. So
those are really good sports to work with. Probably those 2.
Got it. So football and baseball. And what you found out with is though everyone, even people who are not athletes, and there's actually a lot of pro athletes, several like pro football teams are religious Bulletproof. I know because they emailed me. I'm like, are you serious?
Nice.
And stuff like that. But I know that you've been working, on things that pro athletes and CrossFitters and all may benefit from, but that pretty much everyone has a problem with because we sit and because of things like that.
Definitely.
And you call it like the big 3 muscle groups that are inactivated. What are the big 3?
So the 3 major muscle groups we look at in every activation are the psoas, the glutes, and the hamstrings. So those are our main propulsory muscle groups. And those are the ones that basically make up a lot of our posture.
Talk about the psoas, because you know what a psoas is, but I'm guessing unless you're into yoga or like some sort of study of anatomy, most people don't know what a psoas is and they can't spell it either.
Yes. So first of all, it's spelled very funny. It has a P in the beginning, which kind of throws most people off. But the psoas is the deepest muscle in the body. So it connects your femur or thigh bone all the way to your spine. And it's what causes hip flexion. So if you ever think that your core is your abs, like I tell people, try to take a step just using your abs because you can't. So that muscle is basically our main propulsory muscle, like I said, and it tends to get very short on us because we spend the bulk of our day seated. Everyone works at a computer or works at a desk, or we have our kids sitting at a desk in school all day. And that muscle just shortens. So we need to open it up. We need to get it working right. So for people to explore their full potential.
All right, so that's psoas, and then glutes, so that's the butt muscle, obviously, and that's because it opposes the psoas, is that why?
Yeah, so essentially when the glute gets locked up, you're going to kind of tip backwards because the muscle shortens, and your psoas is going to be put in a vulnerable position. So you have to be able to have both of them firing at the right time, otherwise you're not going to move anywhere real efficiently, and you're probably going to have some pain because of it.
All right, so we got your butt and the thigh bone to the spine, psoas, and what was the other one?
The hamstring.
The hamstring, all right. Yep. The hamstring is, I guess it's a muscle and it's, a tendon, right? So you're talking about the muscle that's around the hamstring?
Yep, yeah, the hamstring muscle, which runs all the way up and down, from the ischial tuberosity down to the knee, which causes both hip extension, and knee flexion.
Okay. So these are the things that you see most people, because we sit, we drive, even if we move around some, these are the areas that get weak. And what do you mean by inactivated?
So basically what happens is the muscle just gets into a position where it creates more stability. So it stops firing or locks up, and it's not active. It can't reach its full range of motion. It can't reach its proper power potential because it's protecting something. It's trying to keep something safe, especially in the center of our body.
Okay, so there's an automatic reflex that we have that's like, I'm this part of the body is at risk, so lock up.
Exactly.
And that definitely works. Like this distributed network of sensors in the body trying to keep your body alive. We call them mitochondria, which feed into the nerves.
Do you know anything about those?
Yeah, I heard about them.
Okay.
They do work to protect those things. And this isn't a conscious behavior, right?
No, completely unconscious.
If I was locked up or inactivated in one of those areas, would I even know it?
Yeah, but you probably wouldn't realize directly what the cause was. So, a lot of people who have a shortened psoas are going to end up having tight hamstrings because it's reflexive. So one is short on one side, so the other side shortens to accommodate for it.
So you can't bend over and touch your toes, therefore your psoas needs work.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things I did at the conference when we were calling people up on stage. First, we'll test the hip, and if the hip isn't firing properly, we'll test the hamstring length. And 9 times out of 10, people who their hips aren't firing, their hamstring flexibility is trash.
This is an area that I definitely discovered. I had a problem, about 5 years ago when I was really getting into this stuff where my hamstrings, or no, my psoas was inactivated. Even though I'd been doing a lot of yoga, I can put my ankles behind my head, I can bend over and I can put my hands flat on the floor normally. And for a 6'4" guy, kind of unusual, but it still wasn't activated, which is odd. So you did something, maybe at the first conference, or I don't know, something in the last few years, where you're like, oh, here, sorry about this. And you like took your thumb, and by the way, if you're watching, you would see what Mike looks like, but he's a power lifter. Are you like a pro power lifter almost?
I competed for a while. I was never a pro.
But basically, he has shoulders bigger than like the sheep in my backyard. like the man is a wall of muscle, and at least some muscle.
Some muscle.
Just kidding.
It's all grass-fed. It's all grass-fed.
I put him on the Vasper machine, the cold cardio thing that we use at Bulletproof Labs, and like the Velcro bands almost didn't go around his arms. Like there was a half inch of Velcro left. So I've never seen that before, but good God. Anyway, so this not small man takes his thumb and you just dig it in, like right somewhere around like to the left of the groin out here. And it's like, I screamed like a child, but then like, oh wow, look, I can move again. Yeah. But it was probably, you just kind of vibrated your thumb a little bit. It was like maybe a 5-second thing where it was pretty intense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, when you reactivate a tissue,
What were you doing?
So essentially what we did was went in around the lymphatic point, which we were talking about the lymphatic system before. And when lymphatics get clogged up, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose function in that muscle.
So there's no sewage. So the sewage gets backed up, and then the muscle, that affects the muscle. But that's not the primary cause of inactivation. It's neurological.
No, that's not it's neurological. It's lymphatic. Like I said, it's multi-level.
Okay.
So it can be anything.
So you did that, and there's a noticeable change. Same thing you did last night. My shoulder quit popping after you like found the right points. And you are going to teach our listeners how to reactivate their psoas today. Yep. And then you've also just like created a program for this. And guys listening, Mike's a good friend, and he's going to talk about, he's got a new like program where he teaches people to do this. We have no business relationship other than that he knows what he's talking about, and he's taught me some cool stuff over the years. And actually, you wrote the exercise manual for the Bulletproof Vibe too, right?
I believe I did.
Yeah, that was a while back. But so anyway, like we'll talk about his program, but this is not to sell it to you. But just if you like this kind of stuff, you can learn about it. If not, then don't learn about it.
Exactly.
So anyhow, you're going to teach people how to activate their psoas.
Yeah, I'll give you the real easy one. I'm going to talk everyone through it. It's there's a couple ways to do everything, but I figured just since we're describing it, it's just going to be easier to go with this one. So the easiest way I've ever found to activate your psoas is you find your belly button or umbilicus, right? And then basically you just kind of dig in around that area.
Like underneath, above, or just straight through?
Underneath and around.
Okay.
We're going to make a circle around the belly button, so to speak.
Clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter?
Doesn't really matter. And you're going to find tender spots.
And if you're an innie or an outie, does it matter?
No, it does not matter. Very important question.
No one ever asked that before, right?
No, that's a new one.
You heard it here first.
Exactly.
So you're doing a circle. Like how deep do you push?
Well, you want to push probably about 4 or 5 pounds of pressure.
Okay, so pretty hard.
Enough to make a response. And you're going to look for certain things. Like you'll feel, we're both sitting here on camera rubbing our bellies right now. It's pretty awesome. You'll feel certain areas where there's like a hot spot. That tends to be like inflamed areas.
All right.
So, if I come in on Dave, start right
here.
Yeah,
you'll find some spot. Yeah, that's a tender spot on that side on the left.
And then if I move up a little bit, it's not
less
so
tender.
bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we work our way around. There's another one, and then we go lower.
Yeah, it's tender on that side too. All right. So you find the tender spots, and what do you do? Just
stay in there a little bit longer, and just kind of. It's almost like the same idea as foam rolling, but very different from foam rolling.
Yeah, there's no foam roller for one thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing. And foam rolling won't reactivate a tissue. It'll just kind of break up adhesion and make
which is valuable, right?
Very valuable. But just a little bit.
So
of
this is not adhesion. So if I find the tender spot, what do I do?
Just stay in there and just kind of go in circles,
like tiny little size of a quarter kind of thing.
Yep.
All right. So you do that for how long?
It's about 5-10 seconds, and then move to the next spot. You're not looking to resolve everything right away. We're just looking to cause a response.
All right, and this is going to turn on your psoas.
Oh yeah.
That's not obvious because your psoas doesn't go through your belly button.
Exactly.
All right, and how do you know this works?
Tried it multiple times.
Oh my God, evidence.
Oh yeah. Evidence-based stuff. Who knew?
Got it. And are there like acupuncture systems that would predict this, or any other school that this borrows from?
Sometimes it will borrow from Chapman reflexes.
Okay.
That's one thing. Acupuncture does have its own system of activations, but they tend to be tied to organs, so you can get into some funky stuff that way.
Okay. So basically, you're saying if people who are listening right now, don't do this if you're driving, or maybe just keep one hand on the wheel, or if you're in a Tesla, it'll just drive for you. Don't even worry about it.
Even better.
So you just find these tender spots, and it's weird. If you do a circle, you will find some spots that are way more tender than others, and you wouldn't feel it unless you pushed. Okay, and then you stay on them for 10 seconds. And how am I going to know my psoas? Like if I do a forward fold and then I do this, am I going to do a deeper forward fold?
Well, what we would normally do is we would test you beforehand just to obviously give you that evidence as well and make sure your muscles are firing. But a lot of people, what you'll realize, an easy test to do on your own is stand up and lift your knee as high as you can.
Okay.
And first of all, your balance is probably going to be a little bit wobbly. Most people, especially if the psoas is locked up because it's kind of pulling on your pelvis and pulling you in the wrong direction. Then when you activate it, your knee is going to go higher, and you're also going to have better balance because now it's not pulling on your pelvis improperly.
I've definitely found if you pay attention to your balance, it tells you all sorts of stuff. They have those wobble boards or even like the digital ones. I bought a Sony PlayStation 10 years ago or something. Or not, whatever, the Wii. Not Sony, the Nintendo Wii because it had a board. But I found out when you got it, unless you did all sorts of hacking, you couldn't actually see it. I'm like, I just wanted to stand on there and see how much I wobbled. And I said I had to play video games that were fun. There are, if you go to high-end neurology clinics, they'll actually like look at how you walk and whether your weight is balanced, but just
which part of the foot you make contact with.
And like when you stand, you wouldn't know this, but like you actually go in like a cone-shaped circle, right? And do you get into that stuff?
Not in the first level we're going to be teaching, but we look more at breathing, which is going to be a big contributor to that, and postural analysis as well, which is a huge predictor that might even be more important in my mind than balance because that kind of controls a lot of the balance we have.
Okay, so just looking at the posture. And then, so if you wanted to test this at home, you would stand still, raise your knee as high as you could, and check in, okay, am I balanced? Am I tipping over? Do I need a wall? And do it with both legs?
Yep, both legs, just see if one's better than the other. And then go through your activation and see what changes. Okay,
and the activation is around the belly button, small circle, find the tender spots and kind of rub them for 10 seconds.
Exactly.
All right, and so that's and you teach this for the other muscles?
Oh yeah, we have, we're going to teach at least 2 or 3 activations for each muscle group.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So there you go. That's a useful thing you can try. Well, if you're driving, I guess you can't really test yourself. And
wait till you're home.
Would you try a forward fold as well? Or just
Definitely. Okay. You could totally do that. I would probably try one seated because a forward fold, we can hip hinge.
Like a seated forward fold?
Yeah, and that changes things. So, a toe touch and a hip hinge.
Who has a hard time with a forward fold sitting? Is that?
Yeah, a lot of people with your knees straight, yeah.
Oh, with your knees straight. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I was thinking like I could probably touch the floor always.
Oh, yeah. No. Right now, no.
Yeah.
Well, like sitting on the floor with your legs extended.
Oh, I got it. Okay, so that's harder.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it. So actually that's a great test because that's really challenging for most people, except soccer goalies.
Yeah.
Those bastards. I used to play goalie, but that wasn't my move. My move was running into the other players so they wouldn't score. I don't know why that worked for me. But.
I did the same thing in football, so I feel you. Use my head as a blunt object.
It seems to work until the TBI kicks in.
Exactly.
All right. And then the other ones people ought to pay attention to are the butt and the hamstrings. And if you, another question.
Sure.
For activating a muscle like this, how often, do I need to like walk around poking my gut all day long?
I recommend most people if you have an issue with it. So a lot of people, how many people do we know with back pain?
That's a lot of them, right?
Yeah. So if you have back pain or if you have any issues like that, that's another way to test too, by the way. If your back is hurting and you activate your psoas and all of a sudden it loosens up, guess what you have? You don't have back pain, you have a tight psoas. So that's another tip, another way you can test. But I tell people, it never hurts and it actually helps with some detoxification because we get the lymph moving again.
Okay.
So do it 2 to 3 times a day.
All right.
It takes little to no effort. It takes a little bit of a pain tolerance, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
All right, just kind of massage out those little pain points around the gut. And if you go in and you see like a lot of acupuncturists, like they'll probe those same areas, find out where it's tender, and then based on that, they'll put a needle in somewhere like your knee. Like, why are you putting a needle in? But as soon as the needle goes in, you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. Like,
exactly, the meridians.
I'm fascinated by those systems, but I am not a trained acupuncturist. And the people I know who are good are just constantly studying it. It's an amazing network of stuff there.
It really is.
Now, the other thing that you're working on that's kind of cool is you're always looking at technology for pro athletes that could give them an advantage. And you're one of the few guys who has one of those like dual waveform Russian stimulation kind of things. The old Therastim, it used to be called. So it was kind of cool. When I went to your place in New Jersey, I was really wiped out. I'd been on this, that might have been for the Bulletproof diet. book tour or something.
Yeah.
But I've been like on with media all day. And I'm like, I'm kind of trashed here. So you used some of the electrical stim that I had at home that I hadn't brought with me. I was like, oh, this is like the one place in the entire state where I could find it. And that stuff really can be regenerative. But aside from electrical stimulation, what are some of the other kind of toys that you play with?
The biggest thing I'm using right now is something called Immuno neurofrequency.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's really cool. It's these discs that when you apply them to your body, the radiant heat in your body activates them. And they emit a frequency which causes a response in your body.
When you say they emit a frequency, I'm always a little bit like, okay, what exactly is the frequency?
The frequencies they're harmonious with the ones in your body.
Okay.
So like there's ones to get inflammation out of your system.
Is it like heat or light or radio frequency?
No, I believe it's just, I would say it's probably more of like a radio frequency. Not a radio, but like a sound wave.
Okay.
That's what I'll go with.
So I'm always, like, there's a lot of people who say, oh, frequencies.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, okay, well, frequencies can be measured and like, okay, what's the frequency of your ceiling fan? Mm-hmm. Like, that's very different than what's the frequency of your radio station. And like a light has the frequency of the light itself. And then there's a blink rate. So I'm always like, okay, what does frequency really mean? Because it just means how often per second, but how often what per second?
Exactly.
And what you're talking about there, sounds have frequencies and you can measure light or sound in hertz because it's just how often per second. Mm-hmm. But something called a piezoelectric effect absolutely happens. And we know that light and heat can trigger a piezoelectricity, right? Where you can get a small electrical signal from sound. And so like there are materials that respond that way. So these are discs that use infrared. And then I suppose it could also be light. I don't know the tech. But
I believe it's infrared.
Okay. Well, it's infrared that would power them probably. And that actually, there's good science behind that. Like infrared light from your mitochondria changes water into exclusion zone water. So there is it's the core of really anytime you're doing organic biochemistry, this is happening. So there's a conceivable angle there. And I've had like probably 50 different people say, oh, try this patch. And I'm always kind of like, if it's a nicotine patch, okay, there's a pretty clear mechanism of action there. But other times, I fundamentally believe like there's cells in your body that do stuff you have no knowledge of. And by the way, this stuff in your gut, I have no knowledge of that, but it turns things on and off. Like,
of course.
All right, so I'm open-minded to the idea that you can send a signal into the body that you didn't consciously know about, and even that maybe it's listening to things that we don't know about. So in this case, you've done a couple of classes on this stuff. You're using it on pro athletes.
Using it on everyone. Actually, it's all the stuff that we use for our pro athletes also works for general population as well. And the cool thing that it does for most general population people is it gets them out of pain, which is a very good thing to do.
One of the things I like about you, probably the reason you came to the first biohacking conference, is you're like, I like to do what works.
Basically.
And there's the very pragmatic biohacker perspective is that, well, we think we know the mechanism of action, but it's more important that we got the result than that we understood. Yeah. And so how'd you find these patches? Like, these are not your invention.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not affiliated with the company in any way. Basically, back in January, I ruptured my bicep tendon, which is no fun. Had surgery. My recovery from surgery was becoming very slow, which is very frustrating because one of the things I do is I get people back from surgery. I get people back to their top form or even better quicker than they would normally get there.
Right.
So everything was moving really slow. I was getting very frustrated. As you know me pretty well. Yeah. So a frustrated Mike is not a good thing.
No, you tend to pick up cars and throw them at people.
Yeah, and I couldn't do that because I had a torn bicep, so it was really bad.
Just Priuses, they're kind of light.
Yeah, that's what I stuck to. Priuses and motorcycles. So I found a gentleman who used this technique. Oddly enough, he and I worked in the same town. And I went and got worked on, and I saw a huge increase just in the strength that day.
Okay.
So, my bicep, it was a bicep curl. I was using 8-pound dumbbells, which is a bitter pill to swallow. And I know as he's looking at my arm, basically telling me how small I am. And that day I ended up using 15s.
Okay.
So that was a big jump for one day.
How do you know it wasn't placebo?
Because it kept happening.
Okay, there you go.
And every time I got treated, it went up a little bit more.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Now you've become well trained in how to use these discs, and you actually did some work on my wife, Dr. Lana, and me last night. That was noticeable. Like I have full disclosure, post Burning Man, I've got like this dust in the eye problem. And so I was getting like fluid buildup under my eye that looks particularly obnoxious. And you put some patches on this morning, it was gone, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But you've also, like, you test them on a bunch of your athletes. And tell me about the running. This is one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because you had a bunch of examples. Tell me about the running, the guy with the running speed. What did you do there?
One of my soccer players. So basically what I did was I developed a protocol for athletes to run faster. So I just kind of, again, broke him down, looked at him, figured what was going on, figured where his weaknesses were. And we applied some discs to basically facilitate the process. So, I mean, I put some stuff on his feet to make him a little more springy, put some discs to increase strength of, the glutes and the hamstrings, the muscles I was talking about before. And so we ran that day. We were doing a sprint workout, and all his times dropped a couple hundredths of a second, which doesn't sound like much, but it's on a 10-yard sprint.
Okay, very short sprint.
Yeah,
okay.
Very short. So that's a very big margin. Then later that night, he texted me out of the blue and just said, his words, holy shit, these discs are magic. And he had told me he ran a 5:45 mile that night. And this is after a full-on sprint workout, which is very difficult to do, obviously. And it was like, wow, that's great. What was your best time before that? And he said 6:15.
So it really shortened things.
Yeah.
Now, did you tell him the discs were going to make him faster? Was there some?
I told him that the discs we were going to experiment on him. He was a guinea pig. Willingly, he was a guinea pig. And I said it should help your short sprint speed, your short bursts. And it ended up really affecting his mile. I'm guessing it just really made his stride very efficient, which helped him over the long haul.
Got it. Sometime I want you to have the pieces of tape or something. Just be like, hey, this is going to improve your speed, and see what it does. And
we can do that. We can totally do that.
Yeah, it just you could tell them afterwards.
I'll get some dummy discs.
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah, I could totally do that.
Yeah, because there is the tape you can put on just to increase proprioceptive awareness and things like that.
Tape or something.
Yeah, and so part of me is always like, all right, what's really going on here? But I can tell you, putting little discs around my eye probably wouldn't make it drain at night, because I don't. Maybe placebo can do that, but I think that just knowing you and knowing how you work with athletes and just you're kind of relentless and a little bit ruthless about figuring out stuff that works, and then not caring if people like it or not, which is why you make people cry when you poke them.
Kinda, and my fingers don't bend either.
Right,
so, I was kind of made for this stuff.
Right, and. So I'm intrigued. There are amino neurofrequency things. I haven't studied all the mechanisms of action. They're out of Sweden, guys like a dual PhD who does this. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet. It sounds like he's kind of a little bit reclusive.
Yeah, from what I understand, yeah, he's very busy right now. He's dealing with a lot of cases in Sweden.
And and he just runs some training courses. So you've been through a bunch of his trainings, and you're using discs with pro athletes.
I've actually never been through one of his trainings. I've been through the people who work in it.
Okay, so he has a group of trainers. Okay,
Yep. Yeah, I haven't actually met him yet.
Okay. What other tech are you working with that you're excited about?
So still using the dual wave stim unit.
Electrical stim. Okay, cool.
And the biggest thing we do with that is it's kind of new hand or old hand, however you want to look at it. We basically just fire things up through the gamma loop. So
what does that mean?
So basically, all the extensors of the body are connected, all the flexors of the body are connected. So if we want to fire up, let's say, a hamstring, which can act as a hip flexor, a hip extensor, or a knee flexor, we can hook it up to your triceps. And by stimulating your triceps, your hamstrings and your glutes are going to fire harder.
Because all of the flexors are wired together to recognize
all through the nervous system. Yep. So if you hit one, you hit all of them.
So if someone's injured, say in their hamstring, you might run electricity over the tricep so that it'll get, I guess I should strengthen all of these, and then they'll heal faster?
You can do it that way, or we can even just apply it directly to the injured area as well.
That's what I usually do.
Yeah, but that's no fun. I mean...
Yeah. Well, you like to make people cry.
Yeah, and that'll, the first way we said with the tricep, that'll help to facilitate training in the latter end after we've knocked down the initial inflammation and kind of help retrain the muscle without directly stimulating it. Because you can overstimulate the area very easily.
Okay. What about foam rolling and stuff like that? Is that a part of what you do with athletes sometimes?
I mean, yeah, foam rolling is good. It's healthy. I think it's a little bit overdone. I see a lot of coaches now recommending, 45 to 50 minutes of foam rolling.
Who has time for that?
I don't, and I work in a gym. I mean, I don't think the average person does.
What I do for whatever it's worth, I put the foam roller on the Bulletproof Vibe.
That's awesome.
And then I roll. And you don't need 45 minutes of that because it's 30 times a second.
Yeah, it's getting in there deeper than any other foam roller would. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, the Bulletproof Vibe is I realize I'm saying this, but some people listening don't know. It's a whole body vibration platform that Bulletproof makes that vibrates 30 times a second, which is the kind of frequency that NASA uses for astronaut recovery. So I stand on one of those every morning in front of a tanning light in winter, not to get a nice tan, but just to get my vitamin D and to get the ultraviolet light as a signal into the body. So I might as well get the benefits of like walking and moving and lymphatic drainage and all that.
And get a tan out of it.
Yeah, but I'll roll. Like if I know I have an adhesion, I'll roll with the vibration. And it's pretty intense.
Oh yeah, that's going to be like a deep tissue massage.
And there's also some of the rollers have those like knobs on them.
Oh god, the torture devices.
I put one of those on the Vibe, and it's like if I can handle it, I know it's going to break up the adhesion, but I might make some odd sounds when I do that.
At least you're in the lab. You're out of the house.
Exactly. Lana's waking up at midnight. What are the screams coming from the labs? What about anything else in there? You're not an acupuncturist. I mean, is there anything like that you recommend for people? Any other tech that you're using?
We've actually found using some of the discs on acupuncture points cause an effect.
Part of me is like, all right, I absolutely know that you can get a signal into the body, and I'm not clear on some of the nuances of how this actually does. Like I can theoretically guess, but also like, is it possible that there's some sort of marketing mumbo jumbo? If you name something, this is the cannabis frequency, like you're going to immediately like sell a bunch of these. But this guy doesn't even really, does he sell? Like you have to be certified.
No, you have to be certified through the company.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to work for Amino Neuro.
There's not multi-level marketing.
Nope.
Thank God. All right.
Nope,
I was going to you're out of here. Like I don't know all that crap on the show for a variety of reasons, but
yeah, no, there's none of that. There's no, you can't call me up and I'll mail them to you. That doesn't happen.
Okay, good deal. So basically, you find someone who's sort of primarily sports trainers, massage therapists, like who has these things.
So a lot of massage therapists were in the course. Chiropractors were taking the course. Who else was in there? Primal reflex people.
Okay, so movement coaches, a lot of people.
Movement coaches, anyone who deals with soft tissue injuries.
Right. And those are amino
and bony.
Amino neuro frequency. All right.
Yeah.
And again, guys, I mention products all the time, like cool tech. I've never even met this company. I learned about these a few days ago. I'm like, oh, let's talk about this. So I cannot vouch for them, but I can tell you that if Mike says that he's seeing them work with pro athletes and with himself, Mike doesn't mess around. So one of my techniques as a biohacker is I go with like the trusted experts who test this stuff out, and I test a lot of stuff myself. So I'll be playing around with some of these. I'm assuming you're willing to leave me a few.
Oh yeah. I'll throw a few on you before I leave. So
nice,
make sure they're in the right spot.
And I played with them last night, but so this is not a full on like, oh, these are great. But
not an endorsement by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, but you would say that they work. And
I think they're a game changer personally.
Okay. All right, let's see. Electrical stim. I think you have whole body vibration with your athletes. Okay, what other stuff? Like, are they training with weights, or mostly sprints? Like, just tell me more about what's making the most progress in the least amount of time on the pro athletes.
So with those guys, I mean, obviously, I have the luxury to break down everything, and they can spend more time in the gym if necessary. Yeah. I have some guys who come in twice a day, just because it's if they need to lose weight. Let's say a guy comes off the season, he's too big. So we can do something. We have the luxury of doing energy systems in the morning, weight training at night. So it's really driven to what the athlete needs or what the body needs. Okay. So I do a lot of weight training with people. That's the way I was taught.
Right.
And it's what I like doing. It's what I've seen the most bang for the buck for. I mean, there's a reason why we still have barbells and dumbbells. They work.
You people used to use gravity. It's so old fashioned. I'm like,
hey, it's the most powerful force in physics.
How do you get the strongest, or I'd say most useful signal into the body in the least amount of time? Is kind of that's what I want. That's what we're doing at Bulletproof Labs as well. Mm-hmm. Like, is there a way around those limitations? But I think for pro athletes, there's something to be said for working at the speed of gravity.
Yeah, and there's something to be said just for getting god awful strong and getting strong in the right position.
And this is, of course, a guy who could obviously bench press me. So I'm not exactly a small guy, so
maybe squat him.
There you go. But I did kick your ass in ping pong.
Yes, you did. Yeah, there was not even close. I think I lost by like 18 points in a game to 12. I don't know how that happened.
So you could squash me like a grape in your bicep, but at least when it comes to ping pong. All right. Let's see. And you are teaching these muscle activation things.
Yes.
You just set up some new courses. And if I remember right, it's something about U peanut butter, something, UPB. I don't remember the full thing.
Letter U, Perform Better Institute. So if you're interested in finding any information, we're going to start setting up seminars. The email we're going to be using right now is info@upbinstitute.com.
All right, good deal. And I'll put that in the show notes for you. So this is cutting edge stuff. And Mike, I've known him for, God, this is going on 6 years now. Yeah. You've done 40 years of Zen with me, and just like a trusted resource. If I was injured, he's one of the guys I would call.
Yeah. And
if there's something weird going on, I'd be like, hey, you heard about this? So I just wanted to introduce you guys to Mike. If you're at the conference, you've already probably seen him. But he's one of those guys who's in the trenches looking at what works and what doesn't work. Now, Mike, I haven't had a chance to ask you the question for Bulletproof Radio, which hopefully you haven't prepared ahead of time for, because then it's no fun. All right. So if someone comes to you tomorrow and says, hey, I want to perform better at everything I do in life, not just my sport. What are the 3 most important things you have to offer me? What would you say?
Number 1, educate yourself. Okay. Find out what you need to do to get to the next level.
All right.
And that's in every aspect of your life. I mean, whether that be work, school, find out where you're lacking. Okay. So essentially, instead of educating yourself, we'll say be willing to look at your weaknesses.
Okay.
So I feel like that's much more important. Because your weaknesses are always what hold you back. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So,
and then you say train the weaknesses?
Yeah, train the weaknesses. And I mean, just like don't lose your strengths, but bring up your weaknesses. Okay. And that's the balancing act. That's very difficult for most people to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's 1.
That's 1. I thought that was 3. No, I'm just kidding. So 2 more. Another one would probably be don't get too full of yourself.
All right, so some ego.
Yeah, because the size of your funeral is going to depend on the weather.
Love
that
it.
One from Al Vermeil. And the third one is basically, good things in, good things out. So take care of your body. You only get one. And the cost of taking care of this body is a lot less than the cost of fixing the body.
So good things in, you mean like basically eat right?
Eat right, take the right supplements, do the right things for your body.
Okay, so take care of the hardware. I gotcha. Mm-hmm. So the first one's interesting. Normally I'm just like, oh, that's cool. And I'm not judging these at all, but it just made me think. So a lot of the first half of my career was all about like addressing my weaknesses. And like, I wasn't good at public speaking. Mm-hmm. So like I realized I go into this like I have no idea what I said because I'm kind of terrified, but I'll do it anyway, to the point that I guess I should become a teacher then. Right? So I taught for 5 years, and I became the head of global evangelism for billion-dollar companies, where I have a sense of joy going on stage, not a sense of fear. But that was addressing weakness. But I also in the latter half of the time I've been working and all, I've actually become really good at identifying my weaknesses, but instead of trying to become average, which if you put a lot of effort into a weakness, you'll be like, okay, that's kind of okay. I actually decided to focus only on my strengths and to outsource my weaknesses.
Nice.
Right, which is it's a different perspective on that. But if you don't know where you're weak, like you're hosed. Yeah. Right. But I just realized like project management, I knew I was weak. So all right, I'm going to become a certified project manager. Like the problem is doing stuff that you're not very good at. You may go down that, okay, you become good at public speaking, and then you become proficient, and then you become an expert. And you're like, God, I really get joy from this. But more likely, you're like, wow, yep, no, I'm certified. I know all the steps of project management, and when I do it, I don't like my life. Right? So I learned that about project management. And so I could be a mediocre project manager. And there are people that like, I wake up in the morning, and I just love it. I have a complex project, and I have Gantt charts, and like, oh my God, I'm so excited. And I'm like, could you just stick a pencil in my eye? Like I cannot make myself care. So my take on that was it was interesting because I've gone both ways on that. So it made me think about those two sides of the coin.
Well, one thing I always think about someone like myself, being a hard-headed Irishman that I am, sometimes the quickest way to where you want to get to is through collaboration. Yeah. And that's always been the issue for me. So like with this You Perform Better, I'm actually working with my good friend Steve Murato, who's bringing a ton of information to the table that I feel he's going to balance me out very well.
Well, there's certainly something to be said. You're somewhere around, guess 450, maybe 440 something, depending on when we get this out.
Nice.
But yeah, that whole collaborating to learn a few things might be useful because I've never heard of amino neuro frequency.
Exactly.
And you've taught me some tricks with electrical stim machine too that I didn't know. So I would just say cultivating relationships with people who know all the stuff you don't know. It's enriching if nothing else. Right?
Well, there's too much to learn it all yourself. So
yeah,
awesome.
Beautiful. Well, Mike, thanks for being on the show. You guys are listening to Mike Hoban, who's based in New Jersey and trains pro athletes and some semi-pro athletes
and normal people too.
And just knows a lot of cool stuff. Way more than I've found in a typical sports trainer, which is why you're on the show. So thanks again, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you again for having me.
If you like today's show, you know what to do. Head on over to iTunes and you go to bulletproof.com/iTunes, so you don't have to do any thinking about it. And that'll take you right to the page for Bulletproof Radio and just leave a review. It takes literally like 5 seconds to express some gratitude that way. And if you've been listening for a little while, you know that gratitude is actually one of the simplest things you can do to change your mind state. So if you actually said thanks by leaving a review, hey, you're going to get my gratitude because I look at that stuff every day just to see how I'm doing. And if you think that the show isn't what you want it to be, you didn't get some value out of this, or you're not going to walk around pressing in a circle around your belly button, post on Facebook. Like, tell me what you want. I'm totally all ears. I do Bulletproof Radio because it gives me a chance to talk with people that I maybe wouldn't have an excuse to talk with, and to have these conversations and see what matters most to them. And to be able to share that with you guys. So if there's stuff you want to see you're not seeing, tell me and I'll let you see it. And in the meantime, those reviews really matter because they help other people find the show. So thanks for your support and I'll see you next time.